Good morning. Thank you for the organizer for giving this opportunity to talk here, but also to learn, because I and my company are not exactly expert about the topic at issues, but we have expertise in related field. Next slide, please. And which is the supporting the biomedical research. And we mainly develop web applications using innovative web technologies, namely Semantic Web, including biontologies that were already mentioned. Next 2 slides, please. Next one. From literature and also from the presentation we have seen so far, it's quite clear that in the biomedical research that there is a situation that is similar to what we have in the healthcare field. And so in summary, we have different people needing to interact and to collaborate, different systems and formats and different types of information that, that these people need to exchange and share. Next slide, please. So I'd like to show you a use case where we deal with the same kind of issues and to show how we have addressed these issues by using semantic web technologies, how we benefit from that, and to make a few considerations, discussion points mainly about the healthcare field. Next slide. So the use case is the DC-THERA project, which was started as a European project, and now it has always been a large community distributed all over Europe, about 300 people and 30 organizations, and also in other countries of the world, and having a variety of competencies and field of expertise. So this is the first source of complexity when they need to interact. And next slide, please. And the scope of the project is mainly to develop therapies based on dendritic cells. The fact that very recently the Nobel Prize was assigned to Professor Steinman, the one who discovered these cells, tells something about how they are important in the immune system. And so this is the scope of the project, and that's another source of complexity. And next slide, please. And so when we started the project, people from this community needed to basically routinely answer to these questions. So essentially, where can I find biological material like a cell line? Who can help me with applying this laboratory protocol? Where, in summary, where can I find what I need and who should I contact for that? Next slide, please. Why using the semantic web technologies? This was the situation when we started, and already is, still is, when we started the project. Basically, we have non-trivial knowledge, and we need models that are expressive enough to model this knowledge. And traditional approaches like object-oriented approaches, I would say XML as well, were not enough in our case. Even if we use these models, we use a combination of these models and semantic web models. And the knowledge that we have to deal with is very heterogeneous, not only the type of real-world entities, but also the kind of structured description that they provide, which range from very short summaries to very detailed descriptions of things like data sets, for instance. And we have a need to make sense of all of it, to tie it up. That means essentially to use a common terminology to solve problems like ambiguity of language and use of synonyms and the like. And finally, the web technology, for a number of reasons, were certainly the best thing to use. Next slides, please. because of these reasons, we have decided to model the knowledge the kind of knowledge to deal with by using the semantic web standards. So here, probably you are, at least a few of you are familiar with these models. Here we have a small summary, and basically real-world entities in this context named resources are identified by universal worldwide identifiers, which typically corresponds to web addresses, which means they can also be used to retrieve information about the resources that are identified. And then we can combine a number. We can describe these resources flexibly by assigning labels, for instance, or descriptions, as you see in top left and top right box. And we can associate resources one each other by specifying which type of relation occurs between them. And this can be done flexibly. That is, an arbitrary network of knowledge like this can be built. And this is essentially the power of this modeling approach. Moreover, here you can see that that this particular resource is associated with the relation type to the concept of proteomics data set. This is what lead us to ontologies. Next slide, please. Which means that resources can still be described in terms of schemas and using quite a very expressive language like ontology languages such as OWL. And so that computers can do useful things with this, like automatic reasoning. And by using existing ontologies like the one from the OBO consortium, it's possible to standardize the knowledge that is represented and also to relate it, to integrate it with other sources of knowledge. Next slide, please. So we modeled things this way, and we build tools on top of that. The main one is this web application, which is now available at the address on the bottom. And here, as you can see, first of all, you see the resources that users can navigate and how the ontologies are used to classify them and also to drive the user interface. Next slide, please. So how the semantic web can be useful in this other field. Next again. We have seen this in other presentations as well. Basically, as I was saying, you have different people needing to collaborate using different systems and formats, and also they are more and more in need to collaborate to interact with related sources of knowledge and communities like the biomedical research itself. And this schema on the bottom left, we have seen it in another presentation. It's an example of a lot of things that have been published using semantic web standards about topics like functional genomics, biomedical literature, and so on. Next slide, please. So here, a few hints that suggest how these technologies could be useful in the healthcare field. So we need, as I said before, we need expressive language to model things like drug-drug interactions or even descriptions of SPC. We need to integrate different formats and different services. We can use semantic web technologies to more easily use existing tools or developing new ones that can be reused for doing analysis and network exploration. And we can use them for more easily building web interfaces. Next slide, please. So here it is an example of different types of integration. So in this case, I'm sorry, it's not very much readable. So in this case, basically, the user can use this tool to put in place some initial knowledge she has about, in this case, about a piece of information about a clinical trial and a person working with it. And the tool explored the knowledge modeled by means of semantic web standards and showed this network where you can, with this approach, you can easily discover that there are other people's, another document, which is a PhD thesis, related to the initial knowledge you were interested in. This example is as well accessible at that address. And this is an example, as I was saying, this is an example of multiple integration, because here different types of knowledge is integrated with people involved in it. Also, this tool is a third-party tool that was developed initially for the DBpedia project, which is, in short, a semantic web version of Wikipedia. So quite different project. And we easily integrated it in our context by just changing a few configuration lines. So this is quite an example of how these semantic web standards can be useful. And also we integrate different technologies like web services by using ontologies. We pass queries to the web services named on the bottom by using, by expanding initial keyword-based queries provided by the users. And we are trying to combine multiple sources of knowledge, again, formatted using the RDF language, a semantic web standard, in order to have them in graphs like this. So this will empower even more the discovering capability of a tool like this. Next slide, please.
Are you finishing up?
Yeah. So very quickly, this is an example about interfaces, and so basically the application is able to show, to display information about a single resource depending on it, on the type is classified under. It is instance of, and also you can navigate to related resources, and the box on the left is built from the semantic relations that are underlying in the knowledge base. Next one. And this approach can be used for editing as well. Next again. This is an example of interacting between the healthcare field and the research field. In this quite famous work, in practice, they went through this workflow, starting from an initial failed clinical trial. They could make a number of steps using semantic web knowledge bases and come up to a possible alternative antibody to try an alternative therapy. And also one thing to note here is that when you read Alzheimer's Forum, that is a very collaborative system where people can define things like biological hypotheses, research hypotheses, and so on, and based on semantic web as well. Next, and next.
Please, could you sum up?
It's finished. Next again. This is another example I skip about personal genomics, more or less the same argument. And so this is a summary. Essentially, the summary is that semantic web technologies can be useful in this field, and we would be interested in exchanging ideas and contribute to possible works. And again, next. So a number of people to acknowledge, and many thanks to you all.
Thank you very much for this nice presentation. We can have one question, comment, please. So I understand you suggest that this basic type of tool used in basic sciences also is relevant for this type of more healthcare type of work.
Yeah, I think so. So to make an example, I've heard here about XML modeling, and I can imagine a number of reasons why XML is more appropriate for a number of problems, but it would be useful at least to integrate this with meta-annotations, for instance, so with links to ontology terms or research knowledge bases.
Okay, we move forward. Okay, short.
I have one comment to the RDF. So a lot of knowledge bases at the moment are converted to RDF in the public domain as well as from pharmaceutical industries. So the idea behind is that you have different resources around the world in RDF and that you have unique opportunities to access them. So and that every entity which is in the RDF has a unique location also that you can refer. For example, METRA would be also something which is defined then as a unique location or stuff like that, and that there are a lot of machineries to do reasoning based on these different sources which are available. So that might be something in the, not in the near future, but so to do reasoning or expert system above different systems with different resources available. So
Thank you.